Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The text arrived while I was helping a customer at my boutique, carefully looping a silk scarf around her shoulders and watching her face in the mirror. My phone buzzed on the counter beside the register. Without thinking much of it, I glanced down and saw the preview. I am leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I already emptied our joint account. Haha. My hands did not shake as I read it. My voice did not waver as I asked Mrs. Whitfield if she preferred the navy scarf or the emerald one. The only sign that my husband of 12 years had just detonated our marriage through a text message was a small tightening around my eyes that I hid behind a practiced retail smile. I wrapped Mrs. Whitfield's purchase in our signature silver tissue paper, slid it into a glossy black shopping bag with my boutique's gold logo, and thanked her for stopping in. The bell over the door chimed as she left, humming to herself, completely unaware that my life had just been rearranged in a few lines of digital cruelty. When the door clicked shut, I picked up my phone and read the entire message slowly, line by line, as if it had been sent to someone else. I am leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I already emptied our joint account. Haha. I exhaled once, long and steady, then typed my response. Good luck. My name is Monica Reed, and at 38 years old, I had just received what might be the most callous goodbye I had ever seen. Somewhere in his mind, I knew, Tyrone was probably feeling triumphant. He was likely pacing around his office, chest puffed out in that way he had whenever he thought he was making a bold move. He would be imagining me crumpled on the floor, crying over him, over the money, over the betrayal. Instead, I was walking calmly to the front door of my boutique in Charlotte, North Carolina, turning the sign from open to closed and flicking the lock into place. I dimmed the lights, straightened a row of display handbags, and let the quiet settle over the store like a soft blanket. Tyrone thought this was the end of something. In truth, it was just a switch being flipped on a plan I had already set in motion months earlier. The signs had been there long before the text message. The late nights at work, that somehow never matched the amount of overtime showing up in his direct deposit. The sudden password changes on his phone after a decade of casual openness. The way he started going to the gym religiously, buying clothes that looked like they had been plucked from a catalog aimed at men 10 years younger. He started using phrases he had picked up from the interns at his office, trying them out awkwardly at dinner like new shoes that did not quite fit. I watched it all. I even asked a few gentle questions. He brushed them off with a laugh, told me I was imagining things. I stopped asking and started documenting. 3 months before the text message, I found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of his blazer while I checked the care label on the fabric before sending it to the cleaners. It was from an expensive restaurant in uptown Charlotte, dinner for two, on a night he had sworn he was working late to finish a quarterly report. I stared at the date and the time at the bottom of the receipt, felt my stomach drop for exactly 3 seconds, and then something inside me clicked into place. That same evening, I showered, put on soft pajamas, sat at the dining room table with my laptop, and opened a new bank account at a different bank entirely. The next day, I began quietly moving my personal savings into that account in small, careful transfers. A week later, Tyrone came home tossing his car keys on the counter with the easy charm he used to impress strangers, and said, "We should combine everything into one account. It will make things simpler. One household, one pot. That is what married couples do." I smiled, eyes wide, heart calmly beating at its usual pace. I agreed cheerfully, told him it was a wonderful idea. While we sat together at the kitchen table filling out the forms for our new joint account, I already knew that most of my savings were safe, tucked away where he would never think to look. I moved just enough into the joint account to keep things looking normal. 2 months' worth of typical deposits, nothing more. The rest I left exactly where it belonged, under my control. The account Tyrone emptied the day he sent that text message contained precisely what I wanted it to contain, and not a penny more. He thought he had bled me dry. In reality, he had drained a shallow pool I had set out for him like a trap. What he did not know was that for the past year, I had been keeping detailed records of every suspicious withdrawal, every hotel charge that appeared and vanished, every unexplained cash withdrawal that did not fit our usual pattern. I had spreadsheets, printouts, and screenshots neatly stored in a folder labeled taxes, because I knew that was the one thing Tyrone would never bother to look at. My phone buzzed again as I stood behind the register, the boutique glowing with the last of the evening light. Do not bother begging, the new message read. Jasmine and I leave tomorrow. I will send for my things later. Jasmine. I stared at the name for a moment, then felt another small click of recognition. She was the new receptionist at his office, the one he had mentioned with casual emphasis, the way people do when they are testing how much they can say without sounding guilty. I had met her at the company holiday party, watched her throw her head back and laugh too loudly at his mediocre jokes, seen the way her hand lingered just a little too long on his arm when she thought no one was watching. Jasmine was young enough to be his daughter. She had that wide-eyed look of someone who thought being chosen by an older man with a title meant she had won some sort of prize. She did not know yet that men like Tyrone were not lottery tickets but anchors. I did not respond to his second message. Instead, I scrolled to the contact marked with the initials AW and pressed call. It rang once before my attorney picked up. Monica, she said, her voice steady. Is it time? It is time, I replied. He just made his move. The papers are ready, Attorney Wilson said. I could hear the faint rustle of files in the background, the quiet clicking of her keyboard. I will file them first thing tomorrow morning. Do you want him served in Miami? I walked to the back office as she spoke, my heels tapping against the polished floor. No rush, I said, sinking into my chair. Let him think he has won first. He will enjoy that feeling. She paused, and I could almost hear her smile. Very well, she replied. Email me any new messages he sends. They will help. Trust me, I said, opening my inbox where a folder labeled documentation waited like a loaded file cabinet. He is not going to disappoint. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. I know this must be hard for you, Tyrone wrote. You are not getting any younger, after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The boutique I had built from nothing, where I had painted the walls myself and chosen every fixture. The boutique that now generated more income than his middle management position at his firm. The boutique whose profits I had deliberately kept separate, protected under an incorporated structure with my name alone on the paperwork. I stared at his dismissive words and felt a slow, steady smile spread across my face. I pictured him standing in some airport in Miami, all swagger and cologne, receiving a stack of certified letters. Divorce papers, temporary orders, asset freeze notifications. I imagined the exact moment his confidence would splinter when he realized he had underestimated not just my feelings, but my intelligence. Let him enjoy this small moment of imagined victory, I thought. Tomorrow would take care of him. That evening, I drove home to the house that was legally mine and mine alone. It was a modest, beautiful brick house in an older Charlotte neighborhood, with big trees arching over the street and a porch swing that creaked in a comforting rhythm. I had inherited it from my grandmother, and despite Tyrone's frequent suggestions that we modernize things and add his name to the deed, I had never agreed. It is sentimental, I would say lightly. I just feel better leaving it as it is. He would roll his eyes, but he let it go. Now, as I unlocked the front door, I whispered a quiet thank you to my grandmother for both the house and the lesson in holding on to what was truly mine. Inside, the house felt still and solid. No suit jacket on the back of a chair. No abandoned coffee mugs on the end table. Just the soft ticking of the clock in the living room and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I opened the small fireproof box in my bedroom closet and pulled out the folder labeled legal. Inside were copies of the boutique's incorporation documents, the deed to the house, and the notes I had written after every suspicious incident. At the back of the box, tucked underneath the papers, was our wedding album. I hesitated, then pulled it out and carried everything to the dining room table. I opened the album somewhere in the middle, where Tyrone's smile was still genuine, and his eyes did not drift toward the crowd looking for a better offer. His suit looked a little too big on him in those photos. His shoulders had not yet filled out, and his hairline was untouched by the stress that would come later. I studied my own face in the pictures, bright, trusting, hopeful. You really thought this was forever, I murmured to that younger version of myself. You thought loyalty and love would be enough. The version of me sitting at the table now knew better. Love without protection was a luxury I could not afford. My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the night, each new message from Tyrone more condescending than the last. I have been planning this for months. Jasmine understands me in ways you never could. You will be fine. Maybe you will find someone more your own age. I already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It is nobody's fault, really. I took a screenshot of each message and dropped it into a folder on my laptop labeled evidence. Let him talk. Every cruel word was another brick in the wall he was building around himself. One message made me pause. By the way, I used the joint credit card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. Huh. I stared at the words, then felt a slow spark of satisfaction. Perfect, I said aloud. I picked up my phone again and dialed the number on the back of the credit card. After a brief automated menu, a representative answered. Thank you for calling. How can I assist you today? This is Monica Reed, I said. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. The representative's tone shifted into professional focus. Of course, Ms. Reed. Can you identify the charges you are concerned about? I read them off calmly. 2 first-class tickets to Miami, booked today, and a hotel reservation at the Royal Palm in Miami Beach. I also need my husband removed as an authorized user as soon as possible. There was a brief pause as the representative typed. Do you have any documentation that these charges are fraudulent? She asked. Yes, I replied. I have text messages from my husband admitting that he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our joint bank account. I can forward them to you. The representative exhaled softly through her nose, a carefully restrained sound that carried more emotion than her words. Thank you, Ms. Reed, she said. I will flag these charges, cancel the card, and send you an email address where you can forward the documentation. You will not be responsible for these charges while we investigate. As she processed the cancellations, I pictured Tyrone and Jasmine arriving at the airport the next morning with their luggage, dressed in their new outfits, ready for a week of ocean views and poolside drinks, only to be told their tickets were invalid and their hotel reservation canceled. Is there anything else I can do for you today? The representative asked. No, I said, smiling. You have done plenty. Later that night, another message arrived from Tyrone. Do not worry about the house, he wrote. I will let you stay there until you find something smaller. I am not heartless. I laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty kitchen. Did he truly believe he had any claim to the house my grandmother had left entirely in my name? Had his ego grown so large that he had rewritten even the legal facts in his own mind? A few minutes later, another message appeared. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for my half. I set the phone on the table, leaned back in my chair, and shook my head. My half. My boutique had been built on my late nights, my calculated risks, my savings from the years before we even met. I had signed the lease alone. I had taken out the loan alone. I had stood inside the empty space the night before we opened, staring at my reflection in the darkened windows with paint on my hands, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. He had not believed in it until it began turning a profit. Then he had called it my little shop and complained that it took up too much of my time. The idea that he thought he owned half of it would have been insulting if it had not been so absurd. I opened a bottle of wine I had been saving for a special occasion, the good kind with the heavy glass and the deep red label. If this did not qualify as a special occasion, nothing did. I poured a glass, carried it to the living room, and sat down on the couch with my laptop on my knees. I reviewed the documents my attorney had sent, the drafted divorce petition, the preliminary financial disclosures, the checklist of items she wanted me to gather. I took a sip of wine, let it settle warm in my chest, and started organizing. Tomorrow would be about action. Tonight was about acknowledging the quiet power of being prepared. Morning came with pale light sliding across the bedroom ceiling and a series of angry vibrations from my phone. Tyrone, it seemed, had made it to the airport. What did you do to our credit card? He wrote. The airline will not honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone, showered, and dressed for work. Friday was always our busiest day at the boutique, and a new shipment of designer handbags had arrived that week. Life continues, I thought, even when someone decides to run off with a receptionist who is barely old enough to rent a car. Around noon, as I was reworking a display near the front window, my phone rang with a familiar ringtone I had assigned years ago. I glanced at the screen. It was Tyrone's mother, Carolyn. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I picked up and set the phone on speaker, balancing it on a small shelf as I adjusted a mannequin's blazer. Hello, Carolyn, I said. Hi, Monica dear, she replied, her voice unusually tight. Tyrone told us everything. He says you are being unreasonable and vindictive. He said you are causing problems with his travel plans and freezing his money. He says you have been controlling for years and drove him away. Is that so? I replied, straightening a hanger. Did he mention emptying our joint account without my consent? Or using our shared credit card to buy plane tickets and a hotel room for himself and his girlfriend? There was a moment of silence. I could practically hear her trying to reconcile the version of events Tyrone had presented with my calm, measured response. He said you left him no choice, she said finally. That you have been distant and cold. That you cared more about your shop than your marriage. I let the words hang in the air for a moment, then spoke quietly. Carolyn, I have his text messages, I said. Would you like me to read them to you? I can start with the one where he bragged about emptying our account and laughed about moving to Miami with Jasmine. Or maybe the one where he mocked my age and called the boutique my little hobby. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had softened. He did seem a bit cruel, she admitted. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, I said. I truly do. I have always liked you and your husband. But my attorney has advised minimal contact with Tyrone and his family during the proceedings. I think it is best if we end this conversation now. Proceedings? She repeated faintly. Already. Goodbye, Carolyn, I said gently and ended the call. By late afternoon, the grapevine did what it always does. News started trickling back to me through mutual friends and loyal customers. According to Tyrone's sister, Michelle, he and Jasmine were now stuck at a budget motel near the airport because their Miami plans had collapsed. The airline would not issue a refund, and the hotel had released their room. He had tried to use his personal credit cards, but those had been close to their limits for months. Another red flag I had noted when I began monitoring our finances more closely. While he scrambled, I rang up sales and adjusted displays, the boutique glowing with small acts of everyday normalcy. That evening, my attorney called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday morning, she said. Given his admission that he emptied the joint account and the evidence of credit card abuse, we are in a strong position to petition the court to freeze all remaining shared assets. I felt my shoulders relax. Has he been served yet? I asked. Not yet, she replied. But he will receive the papers at the motel. Also, his girlfriend's social media posts are providing excellent supporting evidence. She has been documenting their adventure all day, including a few less than flattering remarks about you. I have already saved everything. I could not help but smile at the thought of Jasmine posting selfies in front of airport signs and motel doors, unknowingly leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs straight into the court record. I had my own documentation, of course, a year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, and Tyrone's own words. While he had been playing at being a daring romantic lead, I had been playing the long game. He thought he was staging a grand escape. He had no idea he was also laying out all the evidence needed to dismantle his claims. Later that night, another text from Tyrone arrived. You think you are so smart, he wrote. But I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine, whether you like it or not. I read the message once, then forwarded it straight to my attorney with a short note, adding this to the file. He believes he owns half the business. Her reply came back almost instantly. Thank you. This will help. He is making our work very easy. I closed my messages without responding to Tyrone. He could dig his own hole as deep as he wanted. Monday morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing a tailored navy suit and low heels that clicked decisively against the tiled floor. The air smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, and the hum of subdued conversation filled the hallway. When I stepped into the courtroom, Tyrone was already there, standing near his attorney. He turned when he heard the door open. His new wardrobe was obvious. Designer jeans too tight for his middle-aged frame, a blazer a shade too trendy, shoes that looked more like a costume than an outfit. His hair had been cut in a style that might have suited him 20 years ago. It did not suit him now. Jasmine waited outside in the hallway, visible through the glass panel in the courtroom door. In the bright fluorescent lighting, her youth looked sharper, less magical than it had in the dim glow of the office Christmas party. She shifted from foot to foot, glancing nervously at the security guard and the metal detector, clutching her purse as if it could shield her from the situation. Tyrone tried to catch my eye, perhaps searching for some sign of pleading or regret. I simply took my seat beside my attorney and opened the neat folder I had brought with me. The judge entered, and the room rose. We sat again as she opened the file on her bench, flipping through the documents with brisk efficiency. My attorney presented our evidence methodically. Screenshots of Tyrone's text messages, bank statements showing the emptying of the joint account, credit card records with highlighted charges for airline tickets and hotel reservations. Each piece was connected to the next like links in a chain. Tyrone's attorney tried to interrupt, calling my actions vindictive and calculated. My attorney did not flinch. Calculated? She repeated calmly. You mean prudent? My client protected her separate assets and maintained clear records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That is not vindictive. That is responsible. The judge looked over her glasses at Tyrone. Mr. Reed, she said, her voice measured, you admitted via text message to emptying a joint account and using a shared credit card to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny sending these messages? Tyrone shifted in his seat, his confidence faltering. I was just trying to make a clean break, he said, his voice strained. We were not working anymore. A clean break achieved through financial misconduct is not a clean break, the judge replied. It is a violation of your obligations. Furthermore, you are now claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets. Tyrone's attorney jumped in. Your Honor, the business grew significantly during the marriage. My client contributed indirectly, providing support and stability. He is entitled to a portion of that value. My attorney slid another set of documents onto the evidence table. The business was established before the marriage, she said. The incorporation papers bear my client's name alone. She maintained strict separation between personal and business finances. We have documentation of every investment and every profit. Her husband's only contribution has been to belittle it as a hobby. I watched Tyrone's expression shift as reality began to sink in. He had walked into the courtroom assuming that his charm and his version of events would carry weight. He had not expected the cold clarity of bank statements and text messages blown up on screens for the judge to read. He had not anticipated that every casual cruelty, every mocking phrase, would be recast as evidence. In that moment, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced at the end of the hearing. All shared assets are to be frozen immediately pending final dissolution. Mr. Reed is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. Tyrone's head snapped up. That money is gone, he protested. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge interrupted. The court also notes a serious misuse of shared credit cards. That behavior will be taken into account when determining the final division of assets. Outside the courthouse, as I walked toward the exit, I heard Jasmine's voice float down the hallway. What about Miami? She whispered to Tyrone. What are we going to do now? His response was lost in the sound of my heels echoing across the polished floor. I did not slow down to listen. I stepped out into the bright Charlotte sunlight, inhaled deeply, and felt a weight lift from my chest. I was going back to the business he had never understood, never respected, and certainly never owned. The weeks that followed were a study in contrasts. While I focused on my boutique, launching a new handbag collection, hosting a trunk show, refining our online inventory, Tyrone appeared to unravel in slow motion. He tried claiming that the boutique had been his idea, that he had invested substantial money in its early days. He suggested to anyone who would listen that he had been my silent business partner all along. Each claim crumbled quickly under the weight of my records. I had receipts, contracts, and bank statements that told a different story. He is getting desperate, my attorney observed during one of our update calls. His girlfriend's social media shows they are living in her small studio apartment now. Apparently, relying on a receptionist's salary is not the glamorous escape he imagined. I nodded, though she could not see me. That sounds about right, I said. Tyrone's family began calling more frequently as well, their tone drastically different from their initial accusatory messages. Michelle stopped by the boutique one afternoon, her eyes scanning the displays with genuine admiration. I know we did not support you at first, Michelle said, running her fingers over a silk scarf. He made it sound like you were some cold, controlling woman who cared more about your store than about him. But then we saw his messages. We watched how he handled everything afterward. I am ashamed we believed him. I shrugged lightly. People believe what is easiest, I said. It is easier to accept a simple story than a complicated truth. He is still telling everyone the divorce ruined his life, she added. He never mentions the part about emptying the account or taking his girlfriend on a first-class vacation with your money. Tyrone's mother called occasionally as well, usually after he had done something especially reckless. Once, she told me he had tried online gambling, hoping to solve his financial problems with a lucky streak. Another time, he had gotten pulled into a pyramid scheme promising fast returns. Every attempt to regain his former lifestyle, without doing the work, made his situation worse. "I do not know where we went wrong with him," Carolyn said once, her voice heavy. "His father and I offered to help him if he would just take responsibility for his actions. But he keeps blaming everyone else. You, Jasmine, his company, the judge. Everyone but himself." I listened politely but kept my distance. Their family drama was no longer mine to manage. My life was full of other things now. Plans for a second boutique location, meetings with suppliers, brainstorming sessions with my staff about new accessory lines. The only physical reminder of Tyrone that I kept was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. It was his first cruel text. "Have fun with your little shop. At least it will keep you busy when you are old." Below it, on the same wall, I eventually hung my first major business award, a silent rebuttal in gold and glass. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my second boutique location opened in a trendy Charlotte neighborhood. The grand opening drew a crowd. Local press, longtime customers, curious passersby. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions. And the story they were interested in was not my failed marriage. They wanted to talk about a woman who had built something solid, protected it, and continued to grow it in the face of personal upheaval. They wanted to know how I had kept my business separate from marital finances, how I had seen the warning signs and taken steps to protect myself. The best protection is preparation, I told a young entrepreneur who lingered after one of the interviews, her notebook open, pen hovering over the page. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, do not ignore it. And do not ever let someone convince you that safeguarding your own future is a sign of mistrust. It is not paranoia. It is just wisdom. She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. For a fleeting moment, I thought of Jasmine and wondered what choices she would make from now on. Over time, the boutique's success became its own narrative. We were featured in local business magazines, then in a regional-style publication. Customers who had whispered sympathy when the divorce first became public now came in with admiration, treating me less like a woman who had been betrayed and more like a businesswoman who had refused to be destroyed. Tyrone's name appeared only in occasional gossip updates, most of them unflattering. He had tried to claim age discrimination when a promotion went to someone else. Human Resources had simply added that complaint to his growing file. A year after the divorce, I hosted the grand opening for my third boutique location, this one in a busy shopping district in Atlanta. The event felt different from the earlier ones. There was a sense of momentum now, a solid rhythm beneath the music and chatter. As guests browsed the racks and took photos in front of the branded backdrop, I realized something important. Tyrone's betrayal had become a footnote, a catalyst rather than a defining feature of my story. Near the end of the evening, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Jasmine stood just inside the doorway, her posture uncertain. She still looked very young, but there was something different in her eyes, less glitter, more caution. She waited until the line at the register thinned, then approached me slowly, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me. He said you were cold and controlling, that you did not support his dreams. He made it sound like you were some obstacle he had to escape." I adjusted a row of sunglasses on the display table, letting her stand in the silence for a moment. "Those were not dreams," I said finally. "Those were escapes. There is a difference." Jasmine swallowed, nodding. "I know that now," she said. "When the money ran out and the excitement wore off, he started using the same manipulation on me. He tried to move into my studio apartment, told me it was just temporary until he got back on his feet. After 2 weeks of him complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a larger place, I understood what you meant about escapes." I could not help laughing softly. "Let me guess," I said. "Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off. Once that promotion finally came through. Once the world recognized his greatness." She smiled ruefully. "Exactly," she said. "He always had a soon story. Soon, things would be different. Soon, he would be back on top. Meanwhile, I was the one paying the bills." She hesitated. "I am dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a tiny apartment, but at least we are building something real together." "Good," I said simply. "I hope you keep building." After she left, my assistant manager leaned close and whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" I shook my head. "No," I said. That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did. Then I turned back to a young couple examining our new line of handbags. Speaking of lessons, I told my assistant, let us talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line. I think you are onto something. The boutique had become more than a business. It was a symbol of independence and resilience, not just for me, but for the women who walked through its doors. As the years passed, invitations started arriving for me to speak at women's business conferences and entrepreneurship panels. 2 years after Tyrone's first text message, I stood on a stage in front of a ballroom full of women, talking not about divorce or betrayal, but about building and protecting a successful business. During the question and answer session, a woman near the front raised her hand. My husband says I am being paranoid, she said. He says marriage means sharing everything, including my small business account. Am I overreacting by wanting to keep it separate? My former husband said the same thing, I replied. He insisted that marriage meant one big shared pot. He called me distrustful when I kept my business finances separate. Then, when he decided he was done with our marriage, he tried to claim half of what I had built. The only reason he did not succeed is because I had maintained that separation and documented everything. I scanned the room, letting the weight of the words settle. Trust your instincts. Protection is not paranoia. It is just another way of saying you respect the work you have done. By that time, my boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, including our newest store in a stylish district outside Washington, D.C. We employed 30 people across all locations, offered health benefits, and had been featured in several national magazines. The phrase "little shop" had long since stopped being accurate. Occasionally, through mutual acquaintances, I heard bits of news about Tyrone. He had moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage after his company downsized and eliminated his position during restructuring. He took a lower-paying job and updated his dating profile with an outdated photo, still describing himself as young at heart. Ironically, Jasmine had become a regular customer at my original boutique location in Charlotte. She greeted the staff warmly, bought birthday gifts for friends, and once showed me her business card with proud eyes. She had earned a business degree and started her own social media consulting company. You inspired me, she told me one afternoon as she examined a new handbag. Seeing how you built something lasting instead of relying on promises made me rethink everything. I decided I wanted to build my own foundation, not just be part of someone else's fantasy. The framed screenshot of Tyrone's original cruel text remained on my office wall, not as a wound, but as proof of how far I had come. Below it hung another frame, a simple white print with black lettering that read, "Success is the best revenge." It made me smile every time I saw it, not because I spent my days thinking about revenge, but because it reminded me that the best response to someone else's attempt to diminish you is to refuse to shrink. At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, I stood in front of a small crowd of employees, longtime customers, and friends. The store had been transformed for the event. Flowers along the window ledge, a small stage set up near the back, trays of sparkling water and appetizers circulating through the aisles. As I spoke about the journey from a single store to a thriving brand, I felt the steady support of the community I had built around and within my business. Tyrone's name never came up. He had become, at last, irrelevant. Near the end of the night, I noticed Carolyn standing near the jewelry display, wearing one of our dresses and holding a glass of sparkling water. I had not invited her, but I was not surprised she had come. She waited until the crowd thinned before approaching me. "I saw Tyrone yesterday," she said, smoothing the front of her dress. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still does not understand that he did not lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that first text message again, his casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without him, that I would beg, plead, and prove him right about my supposed desperation. Instead, his message had flipped a switch. It had not been the ending he wanted, but the beginning I needed. "He made his choices," I said quietly. "I made mine." As we stood there, a young sales associate I had hired a few months earlier walked over with a question about our new inventory system. Her name was also Jasmine, a coincidence that made me smile. As I explained a few adjustments to the system, I caught my reflection in the store window. A woman a little older than the one who had opened that first account at a small bank years ago, but steadier, stronger, and far more certain of her worth. Tyrone had looked at me 5 years earlier and seen someone he could discard. He thought that text message would shatter me. Instead, it set me free. It reminded me that sometimes the best revenge is not about getting even. It is about getting better, building something so solid that no one else's midlife crisis can shake it. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.